I was lucky enough to spend lots of time with Sam, and hence, my good fortune in hosting this for a moment, really only as a moderator. I wanted to start with a couple of identifications and welcomes. We are graced with the presence of our president of school, president of the Cranbrook Educational Community, and stand up, my dear. That's right. At some point, you actually have to, refresh names. That's AC and Amy Claire and Amy Claire Roche, and her husband Nathan, who is setting the world on fire as a Latin teacher in middle school. I think it would be great if we had, for a moment, ask some faculty members to stand. If you were a faculty member at some point, just so that people can get a touchstone. Faculty, some former faculty, stand up. Thank you. Thank you. If you can still. And we have, former board members here. Peter, thank you. Any other former board members here? It's wonderful to welcome you all here. And before anything, I would like to, I know this is going to be recorded so that the family can also enjoy this moment. So I want to take a moment to say to Cecilia and Maria Paz and Nachi and Tony, thank you for being here with us. We love the Salas family, and that was not a gift that Sam alone could give. Sam had to have the assistance of Cecilia, who worked so much behind the scene, and the children who are doing incredibly good things now. Sam did span the old school, the Cranbrook School for Boys, and the modern school that became co-ed and consolidated as the Cranbrook Schools. And it was Sam's job in so many ways to navigate that transition from a school that many of you of my age remember as a campus for boys, and bring us along into the landscape that we have now, which is a coordinated school, Cranbrook Schools for some 1,600 and plus students, nationally acclaimed, nationally recognized as the kind of school that we would want it to be. Cecilia, Ignacio, Maria Paz, Tony, love to you guys from all of this community. Events like this remind me of one of my favorite quotes that the author of which I can't remember, that goes basically, life is best understood backwards, but can only be lived forwards. And such events are testimony to that. Only now do we understand the gift that Sam gave us and the gift that the family gave us. And it was an extraordinary gift. Sam went on, of course, for a 20-year career at the Breck School in Minneapolis, had enormous success there, and by all by all accounts, was responsible for lifting that school with the same vision and energy and sense of inclusion that he did here. He there was the school head, and so that experience of being around students, that was yours, and that was a gift that, you know, the inestimable, the value of that, and that's what we look forward to hearing about, because I'm about to retreat from this role of speaking and allow folks and ask folks to talk. But there is no complete account of Sam in this room. The only complete account could have been rendered by Sam himself. No, not even Sam himself could have understood what his legacy was, and the progeny and the fruits of what he taught. As I look around, I see folks who knew Sam as an administrative figure, an authority figure, somebody who needed to be carefully identified and worked around. I see faculty brats here who were friends of the family. I see his team, and I know a number of you by report, and so all of the stories are important. So I will perhaps direct traffic a little bit, but I'd like to start by asking for really a free-form kind of contributions as they occur. Let's do this Quaker style, and if Scrib Jelliff was here, he would invoke silence for us, so that nobody was guiding the conversation. So let's remember Scrib for a moment, and you start. Please identify yourself and.
Yes, Tom Capp, class of '85. I live in Dallas, Texas, and my son and daughter just started a school similar to Cranbrook. So the first day I'm taking them in, and
a little bit louder.
sorry, first day I'm taking them in, and I meet the middle school dean, and I'm looking around and I'm chatting with him, and I said, "Oh, I went to this big school up in Michigan called Cranbrook, and this looks like, you know, similar." And he said, Cranbrook. He said, "Did you know Sam Salas?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, my first teaching job was at the Breck School in Minneapolis. And I showed up as a terrified young teacher, not knowing what to do. And Sam was the best mentor and guide that I ever had. He said, I am in this role today because of what Sam taught me at Breck. So he did make a big difference in the Breck School as well. So I thought I would add that. Thank you.
So we're brothers, Scott and Eric and Tony and the rest. And as a long-time teacher myself now, one of my sad points is that I think schools are going the way of corporations and not the way of families. And this place is more of a school for me, or more than a school for me, but like a home. And when everyone else went off to their summer places at the end of the school year, this was our playground. This is what we did. And so all these teachers, and Sam included, they're all our surrogate parents. And so it's just so part of the enriching part of a school community. Dad, teacher, coach, what have you, head of school. To me, epitomizes that kind of bringing together of the family sense of schools. And I've got a Breck story too. My wife works for a head coach at PDS, Princeton Day School. He worked at Breck for a long, long time. And we've talked about Sam and New Jersey track meets. So his name is going coast to coast.
I came here 14 years old, fall of '72. Senior Salas was the first master that I met. He was the dorm master, Marquis, at that time. Never been away from home. Sault Ste. Marie. Never been to something like this. Knew about it because my brother had gone here, but I hadn't gone here until '72. So there I am. First master I meet, Sam Salas. Shakes my hand, says welcome. And I knew everything was going to be fine. Just like that. And it was. A man that can give that much confidence and that much compassion in an instant deserves to be remembered. And Sam Salas was one of the greatest. And so I'm very glad to be here, and I'm glad you're holding this to remember him. He was, as you alluded to, in loco parentis, in loco patri. How's my Latin?
Hi, I'm Jennifer Tom. I'm also class of '85, and Mr. Salas was, I guess, three things to me. He was Tony's dad. He was obviously the head of Cranbrook Schools, and he was my Spanish teacher one year. And in his role as administrator, I remember he once told us that he had this, I don't know if you know, he had a suit jacket, and in his pocket, he carried around index cards on which were typed up what he was going to do that day. And I just thought that was an incredible idea that adults actually organize their days and had plans, and so that was one thing I remember. The other thing was a life lesson he taught us. When I had him for Spanish, well, as you probably, people who know me, I talk a lot, right? I talk too much. And I remember in Spanish class, and I was also very anxious. I didn't want to get anything wrong, and so I was obsessive. And so I remember taking a Spanish exam, and I wrote out way too much for an answer. And I would have probably gotten an A if I hadn't been trying to use words I didn't really know well, or grammar I was unfamiliar with. And from that, I learned a lesson. At least I thought he was trying to teach me, less is more. It's better to be precise than excessive. And unfortunately, even though I know that lesson, I've never actually taken it to heart. So I'm sorry, Sam. But you probably knew, I wouldn't learn.
All right, since we're going on to class of '85, I feel like everybody in class of '85 has to talk. So, Jerry, you're next, by the way. So, Farley Yang, class of '85. I know. Good to see you too. I haven't seen you in a while. So, 30 years. Just want to confirm, yes, Jenny Todd used to talk a lot. That's all I really have to say. Other than the fact, I think I should say something since Sam Salas was my faculty advisor. Which I thought was odd that I placed with him because I took French and not Spanish, but that was okay. I thought it was great to have like the headmaster be your faculty advisor, and then it was also great because Tony was in our class. I think that's why the class of '85 is talking so much, because Tony was in our class. And the thing about Tony is I gave up tennis because of Tony, because he never looked like he ever practiced or played, and he used to kick my tail all the time. So I realized I had no future in tennis. So that's my memory of Tony. But my one thing that I do remember about being a faculty, that he was as my faculty advisor, is a time in which I is in school. I felt a little bit overwhelmed by the number of things I was doing. That I was playing JV soccer, writing for the Crane Clarion, and taking AP classes and doing all these work, and I really felt like it was a bit much for me mentally and physically. And it is interesting that I didn't feel like I could talk to my parents about that. And so I said, faculty advisor, I guess that's what they're for. And he sat there and he said, well, tell me the list of things that you're doing, okay? You're doing too much, okay? And sorry to say, I think you need to cut something out. How about JV soccer? And I thought, how am I going to tell my coach, Coach Shaw? But I said, I think you're right. So that day, later on, went down to the field and talked to Coach Shaw. I talked to Mr. Salas. He thinks I should cut this out. And I remember saying, that's okay. Fine, you don't have to do that. We're still friends. Thank you. So that's my little connection between Sam Salas and JV soccer and Coach Shaw.
Hello, I'm Peter Robinson, class of '68, and Senor Salas, as we called him, was both my Spanish teacher and a good friend. And Sam was a remarkable human being. He had compassion. He was caring, and he was admired for his fairness and his intelligence. And when he was elevated to headmaster, we were all so pleased to see that occur. I would add that the merger of Kingswood and Cranbrook, for those who weren't aware, I mean, it was just filled with hostility. There was a lot of resistance to it, and although Sam was not the architect of this policy, he in essence got caught in the crossfire. But I happened to see him at Bruck in Minneapolis, and it struck me how he had such a warm spot for Cranbrook. And he made you feel that he was proud of you and proud of the schools, and he just made you feel good. And I think that if people from my class were to ask who their favorite teachers were at Cranbrook, they would say Senor Salas and perhaps Del Walden as well. But I think we're all here today because we all feel fortunate to have Sam in our lives, and I certainly am too. Thanks.
I'm Susan Akins-Post, class of '78, and also Director of Alumni Relations here now. But during my time here as a student, Sam he was still teaching some Spanish, but he was doing administrative work more. And my remembrance of him was, that he was a disciplinarian, and he was in charge of making sure these boys in the residential life programs were safe and, being on their toes, because Sneaky Sam was going to be checking to see, if they were up to no good. And so I thought of him as more of a disciplinarian and sort of a stern person. And when we put notice of his passing away, we asked people who wanted to send a note to the family to do it through us. And so I was privileged to read message after message after message that showed me that I had only seen a tiny little part of this man, and that the warmth that the care that he took, and teaching students how to appreciate jazz music and just life lessons that he taught to his students. And I'm sure he was still continuing to do it in his years that he was still, getting more administrative, but that I had only gotten to see the littlest bit. And so it's wonderful to hear all your stories today, but also to read those notes just said it all. And it was student after student after student. And, there are people who are, in a variety of generations. So that was really a wonderful thing to get to learn a little bit more about Sam.
Was anybody picked by the athletic trainer? That's what I was saying.
Wait, I was probably more intimate than most guys, because did anybody read the article in the, whatever? Alumni. Rod Fonda was talking about how I had a groin problem, and I don't know how many weeks that Mr. Salas's face was right here, wrapping me around. And I'm Jerry Payton, by the way, from class of '69, and I've solicited a lot of things from my classmates. But I don't remember a darn thing that he told me, frankly, any specific thing, but I always walked away feeling better about myself, about the school, about the world. He was in. And you're this kind of intimate, with someone's face, and he did it so calmly, matter of fact, and just moved on. There was never anything, jokey about it. He took it all very seriously, and that made me feel a lot more comfortable because I really wasn't. But I've got lists of things that I solicited from classmates. We just had our reunion, well, whatever, the 50th a few years ago. And as Rod mentioned in his section, almost everybody enlisting their favorite teachers put Sam Salas, if not at the top, at least in the top 3. No question. Nobody put him on the bad list at all. There were some, and I'm not going to mention these. But there's no point. Everybody here has had a good relationship with Sam Salas, right? Nothing bad. I'm not going to read all the different things. Everybody thinks he's a great human being. Proud. I'm proud, and I'm sure all my classmates are proud to have known him. That there's somebody in this world like that, and we were able to rub up against them.
Thank you so much. Charlie? Anybody else has a story about the athletic trainer? His training, I think, was probably very succinct and very spare. I think he brought a lot of home remedies to his work.
It was a miracle with a roll of tape.
Yeah.
It's true.
My name is Greg Dirth. Hi, Pete. Class of 65. I never had him as a teacher, but I was there when he first arrived. And within a short period of time, he was quickly identified as, watch out for that guy, because he was a disciplinarian. And you didn't want to screw up, cross him in any way, although he was not alone in that designation. And those of us who were major screw-ups during Cranbrook, we knew the list of stop running if you see him, and be quiet if you see them. And I used to get in a whole lot of trouble for driving my car back behind the dorms here from Rec. Robert Kenny was the English teacher, and he evidently lived above there and couldn't understand the sound of a muffler back behind there. And even though I had permission to pick up students and drive through there, in his mind I didn't. And he and I had more than a battle. But in contrast to his reputation quickly as a disciplinarian, he was also quickly identified as a great guy. And the students really liked him. And I never got to see the cause of that, but I certainly was aware that everybody who had taken his class really liked him and really thought highly of him. And that's why I'm here, to honor a guy I didn't really know that much about, but who was, if you think about Cranbrook teachers, well deserving of this recognition.
I just wanted to say, I mean, he really was a miracle with tape. I mean, we've got all sorts of trainers here now, and I've had trainers in university and stuff like that. Nobody could tape an ankle like this guy. It really was incredible. I had him for Spanish. I overlapped with students, so I was the year after in class of 79. So he was getting even more involved with administrative stuff. He was a tough teacher. Did me well going forward, because I actually remembered some Spanish when I went to college. It helped me. So I was fortunate that my wife ended up on faculty here, negotiated her first contract with Sam, and my wife was a tough cookie, and she came from a different upbringing than a Cranbrook type upbringing, and she went in for her interviews and got the job, and then went to sit down with Mr. Came back shaking. Oh my God. I said, just take the job if that's where you want to work. I mean, I was excited, right? What's better than having your spouse at a place that you adore. So, long history with Sam and very, very fond memories.
I'm Don Stevens from the class of 1970, and I was, like Pete said, Senor Salas was a very formal introduction to Spanish. I'd had a year earlier with Jesus de la Cruz, but Sam was much more formal and very, very methodical about getting the accents right, about getting the places and names correct. And our curriculum was studying, Don Quixote, but you also had the Moors and all the fabulous places in Spain. So I was one of the fortunate 3 guys that got chosen to go with Sam in our sophomore year to Spain for a 2-week deal. And we landed in Lisboa, and we get in the car, Sam is very formal. We're all in coats and ties still, great classic tradition. American ambassadors, of course. But Sam ensured that we would be on our best behavior in local parentis, of course. And, we're not even 16 yet, but a little rambunctious. And Sam is trying to keep us under control the whole time. So the trip from Lisboa to Sevilla was the most elegant trip I've ever been in my life. I've never seen cartoon skies and beautiful green and mountain and roads that are wide enough for 1.5 cars and no lines on them. So that was fun. So we start visiting all these different places, and we're going to Torremolinos, which is the Spanish Riviera. Great, we're finally getting a great time. See some women on this trip. But we get there, in this beach community on the Riviera, it's rainy. We have the crappiest room possible. Okay, great. And Sam is, oh no, this is great, this is Spain. Okay, great. Being Chileno, he's very, very formal the whole time. So, yes, okay. Finally, we end up in Madrid, and we're in the most elegant hotel carved into the, rock there, and it's great. We go down to dinner, and my gosh, they're serving us aperitifs. And what's this? It's a little bit of vodka as a, flavor enhancer for your meal. Get ready. We're 15 years old. Yeah, oh God. Great. So we go through this really nice formal dinner, having a wonderful time, and it's flamenco dancers. Oh, that's terrific. And then the best part comes when we discover that there are women who are topless. Whoa! And Sam is just calling, he's going. So thank you, Senor Salas. Buen maestro, lo mejor.
I'll say a few words. My name is Amy Walsh, class of '82. Hi, Charlie. Thank you all for your memories of Sam. I knew him, I never had him as a teacher. I knew him as a headmaster. But I know him more because I became friends with his daughter, Maria Paz. We were both starting off our careers. She was a teacher at Green Hills, and I had landed in Ann Arbor, and we coached the Green Hills girls tennis team together for 4 years. And when we think about his legacy, I am reminded, hearing all your stories, of how grateful I am for the education and the rigor, and having amazing teachers like Charlie was my English teacher. But I think you would be so proud of Maria Paz. I don't know how many of you know, but she's dedicated her career to teaching. She's now in Chicago. When the years that I was at Green Hills, in the beginning of her career, she just immediately was a beloved teacher. She began the community service program that has gone on in Chicago. So Maria Paz, I miss you, and I look forward to catching up, and just your dad would be so proud. So to honor, his legacy as a father.
Hi. Yeah, you're not going to get out of here with
well, I was the first female. Some of you don't know anything about me or my husband. I was the first female who was teaching academics, much to the dismay of many of your peers, if you're...
and your friend,
yes. Well, I have a very short story, and I also want to talk about diversity. I just was invited to an alumni event. Prospero was being honored, and me as his sidekick, I was also honored. So That was wonderful. I didn't tell all the stories I wanted to, but I want to tell something very short. But I do want to preface it by diversity. And I had a lot of applause, which I felt good about, because my husband is black, he is African, and he brought so much to this school. It's absolutely incredible. So, if you had him, some of you may have had him. You took French, you didn't have him. Too bad.
I wasn't there.
You had him, okay. I said to the group then, the alumni, that, diversity has almost become a dirty word now, in certain circles. But Prospero, my husband, from West Africa, a small country called Togo, and Sam Salas, who was born and bred in Chile, they also were diversity. And part of, we're talking about this formality, it was kind of, I'm very American, though I was born of two immigrants, one from Malta, one from Finland. And I found out I got 10% now North African because of good old Malta being where it is. I am really into diversity, right? As are my kids, who are both into African American history and literature and higher education. But what Sam brought was this, I want to say this international, the sensibility that culture is important and that you have to learn the culture you're in. But you have your culture you bring with you. Fortunately, what Sam brought with us, and I often wondered, did he ever think about becoming a priest? Because there was something about him, and I hear a story about that when he was young, he thought about going to seminary. That's true? Okay, I'd forgotten that. He brought this kind of thoughtfulness, and I think this sense of formality. And sometimes, formality is needed. I was a Peace Corps volunteer, and we had young people my age. I knew better than to wear miniskirt in the 60s, but we had young people show up in shorts to the governor's office. You don't do that. That was very American. So he did always dress for the occasion, right? And maybe sometimes overdress. But the sensibility he also brought was a sense of respect for different cultures. And it is no secret then, or no surprise, that he became a mentor. Sam's voice was one of the several that hired Prospero. And I think Prospero was initially being hired because the black kids needed a black faculty. That was why he was invited. We were invited to several prep schools because in the 60s they all decided, we got to find us an African American. Well, he was African. At Taft School they wanted African American, not an African. But anyway, Sam brought this. I think Prospero Jacobi brought that. There are funny stories about the way Prospero Jacobi dressed, etc. But he also brought that sense of formality sometimes. That you have to respect learning. So if you're going to respect learning, don't tip in the chair. These were the kind of instructors they were, right? Or respect the fact of the assembly hall, the velvet seats, respect that. He respected people tremendously. I started by saying I was the first female member and I was hired part-time. And I really felt out of place. I did not want to come to Cranbrook. Working class kid. I came here as a Girl Scout when I was about 11 years old. I was overwhelmed. I never would have made it here when I was a teenager. But I found that the faculty were extraordinary people, and there was a kind of diversity and a learning. They were interested in us. They were very interested in us and what we could bring. But I was hired as a part-time. There was a couple of other gentlemen who were hired part-time. So with some trepidation, I went up to the assembly. It was the first assembly I was going to. It was the opening year of the assembly. And new faculty were going to be introduced. And this was, I guess, fall of 71. Yeah. And I went upstairs and I stood there, on the side, near a window, and close enough that, I would be doing up. Well, one gentleman, the gentleman that I remember the most because he became a rather a Pied Piper of young people. He was teaching part-time too. He was introduced by the head and he went up to, and people applauded or whatever. And then the assembly went on, and I shrank back because I already felt misplaced, very misplaced here. And I ended up having a 40-year career, so I was no longer misplaced. I had a lot of different roles, and I'm very happy. But who came to me when it was done? And I was very, again, disappointed, and what was it saying to me that I was not introduced, whereas other part-time faculty were introduced. And he just said several words. Sam liked his life simple. His office was simple. Stack of paper here, that's it, a lamp. So he came to me and he said, Fran, some of us really don't get it. We really don't understand. I wouldn't say get it. I'd say some of us really don't understand. And that was enough, and I left. Sam was that kind of person, so he would, as a trainer, he could do something that was intimate and needed, and he would take that very calmly. If you were in trouble, he would ask you to sit down. Sam would just not lose it. So that little tidbit shows. The other thing I want to mention, also as a faculty, he chose me to be the director of studies. Now, I don't know why he did that. There were a couple of men who applied, and they really would have been very qualified. But I was leaving the middle school. I'd been head of the boys' middle school, so that's even more outrageous, isn't it? I was in the boys' middle school for 8 or 9 years, and no one kicked me out. I left because I wanted to teach high school. But he asked me to be director of studies. And so, as I, how old was I, 32, saw the faculty, it was a sea of white men and my husband and the choir director. And very learned, really, I admired them and their personalities, but several of them, whose names I won't mention, were particularly, hard-assed, and felt that they could do whatever the hell they wanted to in the classroom. I was more of a rule follower, though I could handle rule breakers or whatever. That was never a problem for me. I would think I was initiated in my Peace Corps experience. In any case, where was I? I'm going to be 82, I have an excuse. Where was I? Where was it? Do you remember where I was? Okay, here's the second story, and then I'm done because I've talked too much. And Maria Paz, Cecilia, Ignacio, Tony, I love you, and Prospero does too. So I went to Sam. I would peek my office was right next, practically, right, I remember you. And I would peek in the door. His door was always ajar unless there was something really serious. And he invited, that was to invite people in. It could be a student too, right? He was formal, but he was very, very attuned to the real job is to work with kids and help them, or faculty, young administrators. So I saw him, he was typing, that meant it was fine. Sam, do you have a moment? So I told him that I had left notes for several faculty, and they had not responded at all. I was very concerned because I had a few faculty come, and they either would not come to a meeting that I had scheduled with parents, or they would come in late and not tell me. Well, you can imagine, I'm the director of studies, and the faculty aren't there, and I'm supposed to have a meeting, the parents, are there. So I said, and he did the obvious. He said to me, I said, Sam, what am I going to do? Do I need to write a formal memorandum, whatever. And he said, much as he told you, you need to talk to me, Grant. if I mentioned the names, you would know what I mean. But I won't mention the names. And so that was my lesson. Hey, what do they say? If you don't mind the fire, get out of the kitchen, whatever. He said other words, but that's what I heard. He said, you really need to talk to them, Fran. And, he mentioned the names and da-da-da-da. So within a week, I had talked to each of them, and it got easier. It got much easier. And I think another administrator would have handled that differently, and I think another administrator would not have gone to see to talk about it. But I could always go in and speak frankly to them. I could speak from the heart and head. And he respected who I was as a woman, and as a human being. Yeah. I'm sorry, when I'm too long.
That's great. Ingo Rautberg, class of 1981. I never had Sam as a teacher, but I was Ignacio was in my class. Of course, I knew Maria Paz, Tony, and both Cecilia and Sam. I knew them when I was younger, and that was when I was like 7th, 8th grade. My folks had left town. I think they'd gone on vacation. I was pretty good friends with Nachi at the time. And so I got to stay in the dorm with them, and I proceeded apparently to get the flu. So I got very sick. And I remember both Sam and Cecilia, they were, they'd take care of me, Vicks vapor rub on my chest, 3 in the morning. I'm just like, oh, come on, you've got to be kidding me. But, they were just a marvelous family, everyone was. And I know Sam had a reputation in my class of being rather difficult. And maybe it was respect, a little bit of fear compared to who we had before, which was, Mr. Corkery. And it was a little bit more laissez-faire, and Sam was a little bit more disciplinarian. And I've always respected him and loved the kids, and I know, all the things that they've gone through. And I think it's wonderful that we're honoring him today, because he really deserved it.
Yeah, my name is Scott Legal. I'm class of 84. My parents worked here for 18 years, most of the time while the Salases were here. We moved here first in the summer of '69, and I was 3 years old, so I don't have very, very early memories from then. It's before you, Fran. But one of the first memories I have as a kid was being at the Salas' house over on the side of Marquis and playing soccer in the side field with Tony and Maria Paz and Nachi, and Sam coming home from work in his suit, taking off his blazer and coming out in his dress shirt and tie, but with his dress pants and his shoes, and joining us to play right then. And that to me was and is the best and earliest memory I have of the Salases. And through all the birthday parties and sleepovers and all that stuff, I never had Sam as a teacher. I never saw him as a disciplinarian, even though he became head while I was a student here. But it's just a welcoming family for years and years. Forever. I saw him at NAIS conference a couple of years ago as I've become a teacher myself. And thank you to the Salases. Hope to see you all soon.
My name is Rich Lamb. My wife and I came here in 1977. We started our career living in the turret, which is down by Cranbrook House, for those of you who might know where it is. I was assigned to work in Marquis, where Charlie was head housemaster, and I really didn't know what to do. And this kind gentleman was working with me, Sam, and he said, "Let me show you some things." and he showed me what to do in a very kind, straightforward way, and worked so well that I stayed for another 41 years.
My interview at Cranbrook happened approximately 2 weeks prior to where we are now. And being of a very young age and rather inexperienced in Penn School, I had no idea how many red lights should have been going off for me to be interviewed at that time of year. And my first entry into campus was to Chris Corkery's house, and that was, for those of you who know Chris was very much of a, he was Irish down to his shoes. And he said, "Oh, welcome, Charlie. What's your poison here?" I said, "Oh, okay, I'll fix you up with that." So I arrived from the airport, and I'm meeting the headmaster of Cranbrook School with a drink of scotch in my hand. "How many fingers, Charlie?" "Oh, okay. This is crazy." And I didn't realize that was a handoff to Sam. And the position I was interviewing for was a housemaster of Marquis. It's pre-Memorial Day weekend, and you're looking for a housemaster of Marquis. Hello? You got a big problem on your hands, Sam. So this is all beyond me. And I was there for the weekend. He goes, so you have some experience with the dorm, Charlie. Nobody had asked me about the dorm, up to that point. It was all Jake Jacobus was driving me around with Adam in his Mercedes. "Oh, here's where the boys eat. Here's where the girls eat. Oh, this is grand. This is grand, Jake." And by contrast, Sam said, "I want you to meet me at the dorm because I'm on duty tonight." So I spent the evening doing duty with Sam at Marquis Hall as the boys came by and signed in, and each one, as each boy came by, it was, "Paul, how are you today?" His range of timbre, of course, was all very quiet. It was only an indoor voice. It was actually a voice meant for a room. And "How was your day today, Paul? How did your tests go?" And coming from a boarding school where students were addressed in sentences of 3 words on the East Coast, I was shocked, completely shocked. What is this man doing, talking to these boys like this? He's so friendly. And that, of course, was my introduction to what proper schoolmastering should be in a dormitory. And I learned a great deal, as I mentioned in that article. My grand life lesson from Sam was when I was awakened at 3 a.m. in the night, and the smoking lounge was on fire. Every piece of discarded furniture that you could ever find, you give it to the dormitories at that time. We had big couches and chairs and things like that, and it stank. And it stank. And I threw on my pants, which I always kept right next to my bed, and there at the smoking lounge, boys were alarmed, of course, because it was 3 a.m. They were even tired, and finished smoking, and they were beating the cushions of the sofa. And I said, oh my God, the smoking lounge is on fire. To throw those things out the window. It was a horrible night. And I wanted every one of them to be hung up by their ears. And I wanted to close the smoking lounge. But as Fran mentioned, Sam's caution was always very immediate, and his words to me were, and of course there was the rest of about 3 beats. There was a pause, like his pauses were unbelievable, especially for the kids to hear those pauses. And he said, Charlie, I think you need to talk to them. And that was Sam for me. Yes, Eric.
So Eric was class 85, and it's going to be close to Christopher and Scotty's. My relationship with him was different because Tony was one of my best friends. And for 4 years, I never had him as a teacher or anything like that. Only once my senior year when I was in a Big D did he have any academic thing with me. But as Charles was my academic advisor, he knows I was not the role model student here. He was thankful that I graduated. But Sam, from the very beginning all the way to the end, the only day he ever treated me like a student or with any of the stories you guys are telling the discipline was that one day and I had my Big D. But the day, all the time before that, and then the day after that, he just treated me as Tony's friend. And it was amazing, like I said, he knew all the stuff that's going on. Like I say, I was not a good influence on his son, but he was just Tony's dad to me. And like I say, that was really nice because, like I say, he was literally one of my best friends and never discouraged it. And so I was very, very thankful that I got to have that opportunity.
I might have a tiny word as a follow-up to Charlie, because I was also on that floor when we were just married and in an apartment maybe the size of, let's see, about that. And, but what made it all worthwhile was knowing that the Salases were downstairs. They were such a gift to us as a new married couple, and then eventually as new parents. And I remember the word la cultura because it's from Sam and Cecilia. We learned all about Chile. And going into their apartment was like walking into this wash of just an atmosphere of culture and richness. From the food to the music, and we'd listen to the paras sing revolutionary songs and the jara para. And, oh gosh, I wanted to be Chilean. And then their children were extraordinary. Maria Paz was one of our, Maria Paz, thank you for all that you did for our children. They speak about you to this day. Every Christmas, Maria Paz made the most exquisite cookies. I mean, very elaborate, beautiful, and also tasty. And it was such a treat. And of course, everybody wanted Maria Paz as the babysitter. She was the one. And you had to sign up months in advance. But it was the cultural richness that this whole family, all of you brought to us, for which we are forever thankful.
On that note, we'll send along love and wishes to the family. This tribute could go on, family, and we're just all here extremely grateful for the time you spent with us. We had him at a time when he was right in the middle of our lives. That's not always the privilege of an administrator. Things change, but we're so grateful to them. We're so grateful to this place. Thank you very much for joining us today.